Dear colleagues, it's 9 o'clock on the dot. My name is Alik Nyasulu from ESCAP here in Bangkok. I would like to welcome you all to this side event on measuring illicit financial flows, global experiences, which has been jointly organized by ESCAP, ECA, UNODC, and UNCTAD. Just a few housekeeping rules. Please keep your microphones muted. And without wasting much time, we'll go into the opening formalities of our side event. At this juncture, I would like to invite Ms. Rachel Bevan, the Director of Statistics Division in ESCAP, to make a few opening remarks. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Alec, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you all are. And I can see already from seeing a few familiar faces and looking at who's joined online that we have indeed got people joining us from all around the world. So that's fantastic. And it's my great pleasure to be able to open this side event. And as Alex already said, we've got a range of different organisations who've helped us to put this together today. And what we really want to do is to actually devote as much time as we can to actually hearing more about what's actually going on in terms of that measurement of illicit financial flows. So first of all, just briefly, what are these illicit financial flows that we're talking about? And just put really, really simply, they're the illegal movements of money or capital from one country to another. And we know that at the moment, there's no official data actually reported on the value, on the kind of scale of these inward or outward illicit financial flows. And it is actually one of the indicators that's in the global SDG database, indicator 16.4.1. But although we haven't currently got those official estimates, we do know, we've got some really great news that we are making progress on estimating the scale of these illicit financial flows in various selected countries, and really through the great work that different organisations are actually doing, and which we'll hear more about today. So why is it really important that we measure these illicit financial flows? And the main reason is that these illicit financial flows really drain financial resources from national treasuries. And that's money that could otherwise be invested in programs that would be promoting inclusive growth, like the green economy, money that could be going into education, health, all kinds of different programs, gender inclusive programs, environmental protection, and all of these illicit flows basically mean that it's much harder then to achieve any of the other SDG goals, particularly given the scale and the impact of some of these flows. So I'm really pleased, though, that actually through us all working together, and particularly through the work of UNODC and UNCTAD, but we have actually now developed a conceptual framework and methodological guidance, which is really then going to actually help countries to make it much easier to compile information on the scale of these flows, but also to have information that's actually standardized across countries. So we can actually look at what is actually going on across countries, and we can also look at the inflows and the outflows and then compare that information. So I really want to encourage countries to make use of that work that's already gone on, and also to listen today to all the different experiences, because this is still very much an emerging area. So it's an area where we want to continue to work together. And we know that from our experience in the Asia Pacific region, that measuring illicit financial flows, we know it's not easy. We know it also requires cooperation of lots of different agencies and organisations at the country level. So it's not just national statistical offices, tax and customs authorities, but it's also other organisations like financial intelligence agencies, centrals, banks, law enforcement authorities, to name but a few. But we also know it's really important as well, not to just actually measure the size of these flows, but also to actually link it to national policy and national action. But going forward in ESCAP, we plan to continue to support countries as they seek to measure these flows and to also help countries as they seek to use this new framework and the new guidance. But as I close, I really wanted to say a huge thank you to all our partners within the UN system for the huge amount of work that has gone on to actually put together the guidance, but especially want to thank the countries themselves that have actually been taking those first steps to measure these illicit financial flows, and really looking forward to hearing from countries today, as well as our UN partners, and to actually really hear firsthand about that work. I'm keeping my remarks very short so that we can have more time to hear from people who've been working on this. So I'd like to say, yeah, really looking forward to hearing what everybody says. And we should have time at the end to also hopefully hear a few more questions. So with that, I will say, yeah, all the best, and I'll be listening in the background. Thanks very much. Back to you, Alec. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, for the opening remarks and the insights into the work that all our partners have been doing. At this point, I would like to invite Ms. Angela May, who is the Chief of the Research and Trend Analysis Branch in UNODC, to give us a few remarks.
Thank you, Alec, and thank you, Rachel. And I have to say thank you to all our partners in the UN. Rachel, as you say, when we do things together, when we really cooperate, we really achieve results. And so I really want to thank particularly our partner in UNCTAD, that, you know, when we started to work together to really think about as co-custodian, how can we move this indicator and really help the countries to get into, and to the regional partner, to ECA, to ESCAP, for the, you know, working together to really support the countries. And so why the excitement? I mean, I think I'm really excited for this event. Because some of you, maybe few of you, have been in this community for a long time since we have approved the SDG indicator, and may remember that when the SDG themselves have been approved, there was a lot of doubt on the fact of including a goal SDG 16, that deals with things that, you know, they don't really fit into social, economic, or environment, but they really cut across, and really they are the enabler, if you want, of all of the development. So something relating to security, governance, and clearly expressed also by the countries in approving the target 16.4. Clearly, illicit financial flows is one of those issues that can, as Rachel has said, also undermine all the achievement of all the other SDGs. But from a statistical point of view, there was nothing. And so they, you know, we approve an indicator, we give it a definition, but basically, you know, no countries basically in the world had really measured that indicator. And so it's exciting to see today that we see now the results of all the efforts that we have been having in these years. And so those of you that are in the audience, that are, if you want, policymakers, that really understand and care and want to know more about illicit financial flows, in order to understand how much are we talking about, where is the money going, and so that in order to know how to address it, I hope you are excited to see that now we have some data, some results, and you will see during the event at least we have a magnitude. And it's interesting to see that in some countries, just looking at the drug-related illicit financial flows, you know, these are numbers that are comparable to what is coming in the country because of the agricultural exports, for example. So it really gives me an idea of how important it is for both economic development, but also to address crime and security. It's important to understand the size. To the statisticians in the audience, again, I hope that listening to the countries and the experience that shows how this data are possible to be produced, that you get inspired. You see that it is possible, and that you will see what are the efforts that need to be done, and so that again you can be inspired, so you can be connected with the countries that have gone through this estimates, and so see how little by little we are really moving toward developing this indicator. We are still at the preliminary stages. We still have few countries with few data points that we can present to the world. But that's because we are investing on national statistical system. We are not, we have not gone for the quick and dirty solution to get some estimates that we could report at the global level or to regional level. We really chose to go through the more, if you want, that requires more effort, but more of a long-term and sustainable solution to really build in this into national statistical system. So that's why it's not so fast, but it's something that we hope maybe in 10 years we will have people here at the Statistical Commission discussing and seeing how this is becoming actually a mainstream statistics across countries. So with that excitement, I leave you and really to hear exactly, and really exciting to hear the experience and the results that we will hear from our. And I just also want to finish that Rachel and I have the pleasure and the honor to introduce you to this event, but behind us there are really the people that did really the work, and so I really wanted to praise all UNODC, ESCAP, UNCTAD, ECA people that have done really a lot of work to come and to be where we are today. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Angela, for those great remarks. And before I invite the first speaker from Bangladesh, I would like to invite Anastasia Margaret from ESCAP just to give us a little a teaser or a warm-up in form of a short survey or a Mentimeter. So Anastasia, you have the floor.
Please, dear participants, either click on the link in the chat box, or if you see my screen, scan the screen with your phone, and we will proceed to a little poll to assess whether our audience is aware of the problem of illicit financial flows. And click the thumbs up symbol, so we will see how many people have accessed the poll. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Quite a lot of participants. Let us proceed to the first question. I'm going to move the slide. Somebody raised their hand? No? Okay. Please click whether you know or maybe you're not sure what illicit financial flows are. Thank you. We can see that most people are certain they know what illicit financial flows are. Some people are not sure. And very few people do not know what they are. Thank you very much. Can you please then answer the following question? What do you think are the characteristics of illicit financial flows? Whether they come from illegal practices only, or they can come from illicit, not necessarily illegal practices. Or do they come from both types of practices, illegal and illicit? Thank you. We are currently observing the results. Most participants in the audience believe that illicit financial flows do come from both sources, illegal practices and not necessarily illegal practices, those that we call illicit. Thank you for voting. And one last question in this session is whether you are aware that there is a conceptual framework to measure illicit financial flows. Maybe you have familiarized with it already, or maybe you haven't. So dear participants, we can share the link to the conceptual framework. We will do it in the chat later. Thank you so much. Back to you, Alec. Do you have any commentary?
Yeah, so thanks very much, Anastasia, for the Mentimeter questions. I think, as we can see, there is a good understanding of illicit financial flows, and it appears some of us have not seen the conceptual framework, or others have not read it, so you're encouraged to have a look at it. And then I think there's a better understanding that illicit financial flows could also include something that is both illegal as well as not illegal. So these things could be opportunistic. So, for example, things like profit shifting to other countries, where businesses can take advantages of loopholes in tax regimes. So those are some of the things that the manuals will actually address. So at this juncture, I'll invite our first presenter. But before I do that, just make sure that if you have any questions as our presenter speaks, please put some of the questions in the chat, and then we'll come back to you later on, and then we'll ask the presenter to address those questions. And so I'll first invite Ms. Julia Heck. She is the Joint Director at the Bangladesh Financial Intelligence Unit. So Julia, you have the floor. We're looking at around 12 minutes. You have the floor, Julia. Can you proceed?
Thank you very much.
Julia, we cannot hear you very well.
Hear me now?
Can you hear Julia, colleagues?
I can. Is it better now?
Julia, we cannot hear you.
Maybe try to unplug your microphone and plug it again.
We cannot hear you, Julia.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit. Can you try speaking straight to your PC, maybe?
Is it better?
No. Can I? Yeah, Julia, maybe you may have to wait a little bit. I'll invite Chingiz from Kyrgyzstan, and then we can come back to you, Julia.
Well, thank you, Alec, for giving me the floor.
Can you just put it in presentation mode, please?
Yes. Is it okay now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Alec, for giving me the floor. Hello, dear colleagues, dear participants. I would like to make a presentation on IFFs measurement in Kyrgyzstan. First, let me tell you a few words about the IFFs measurement project in Kyrgyzstan that was started in the second half of 2021 with the assistance of ESCAP, and conditionally it was divided into two stages. The first stage is a so-called preparation stage, where we determined main directions and tools, main agencies, I mean state agencies involved in the process, as well as we determined methods of IFFs measurements, and we analyzed the availability of data that was needed to apply methods. The second stage is the stage is a stage of measuring itself. At this stage, we made a preliminary measurement using the selected methods, and the first results of that measurement in Kyrgyzstan were presented at the end of October 2022, and the final results were presented in early December in 2022. As for methods of IFFs measurement, I can say that not all proposed methods were applicable for Kyrgyzstan, and among proposed methods were chosen below three methods. They are partner country method, price filter method, and flows of offshore financial wealth. Also, I would like to underline that during interagency meetings, during the meetings of the working group, it was proposed, taking into account specifics, national specifics of the Kyrgyz Republic, to try to measure so-called gravy export of goods, and also try to measure illicit financial flows from remittances of labor migrants. Thus, in Kyrgyzstan, we applied 5 methods. 2 were alternative methods, and 3 were proposed methods. As for data availability, I would say that while measuring both proposed and alternative methods, we used data from Comtrade database. Also, we were provided data by the Kyrgyz state agencies such as National Statistical Committee, National Bank, National Customs Service. We also used some data from open sources, from different analytical researches, especially when we were measuring and applying alternative methods such as gray re-export and remittances from labor migrants. What challenges that we faced during the project? First, it is a small level of awareness concerning methods of IFFs measuring among state agencies involved. Here, I don't mean the focal state agency, such as the National Statistical Committee. Here, I mean another interested state agencies, for example, such as Customs Service, Tax Service, and so on. The second challenge is data availability. Some data was not available due to the national legislation on the protection of banking secrets, on commercial tax and other secrets. And the third challenge, it was data sharing. There was a weak interagency cooperation on information, on data exchange due to the lack of legal mechanism on IFF measuring. Here I would like to tell you about the lessons we learned during the project. First, not all methods were applicable for Kyrgyzstan, and the proposed measurement methods need to be further developed, taking into consideration national specifics of the Kyrgyz Republic. It was the illicit financial flows measurement was also complicated due to the absence of certain data, due to the limited access to some data or to some information, as well as due to the secrecy of some data and information at the national level. And also it was a lack of internal legal mechanisms and tools for the full involvement of other state agencies, except National Statistical Committee, into the IFFs measuring process. What next steps to do or way forward? First, I would like to underline that there is a need to adaptate IFFs measurement methods to the national characteristics or conditions of the Kyrgyz Republic. The second is capacity building. There is necessary to conduct some training events with the specialists from state agencies involved in IFF measurement process. It is also needed to develop national entitlement mechanisms and tools for the further implementation of the proposed methods for IFFs measuring. And also there is a need, and it is necessary to measure not only trade and tax IFFs, but also IFFs from criminal activity, in particular from drug trafficking, human trafficking, and etc. I mean, in the Kyrgyz Republic. That is all I wanted to say. Thank you for your attention. Please, if you have some questions.
Thank
I
you,
think it was in time. Yeah.
Thank you, Chingiz, for those insights about what you guys have been doing in Kyrgyzstan. I do not see any questions, but just to prompt you, what do you think is the first thing that made it possible for you to start this work? What was the major thing that you really had to deal with to really start this moving?
You mean before the project started?
Yeah, for you to start this work on measuring illicit financial flows in Kyrgyzstan, what was the major problem that you had to overcome to start this work, to make this work possible? What exactly did you do?
At first I would like to say that it was some kind of the It was proposed, for example, at first from our government, it was proposal to make IFFs measurement and the focal point as a state agency in this sphere, in this project. It was determined National Statistical Committee, and if I'm not mistaken, it was an offer from the ESCAP and UNODC to make a pilot testing measurement of IFFs here in Kyrgyzstan. And before it, we made some kind of an application to ESCAP, and our application was approved, and we started to measure it in order to make a report. It is very important for us, for our republic, in order to report about indicators SDG 16 that includes illicit financial flows.
Thank you very much. I think we'll move to the next presenter. Thanks, Chingiz, for sharing the insights.
Yes.
If there are any other questions, I think colleagues feel free to put them in the chat, so we'll come back to you later on. Julia,
Yes, thank you.
Are you ready now?
Yes.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
speak a little bit louder. Nice.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. You have the floor, or just share your slides.
Thank you very much, Alec.
Thank you,
And,
Julia.
Good evening from Bangladesh, and sorry for the technical glitch. And thank
It's
you for
fine.
having me here. I would like to share the Bangladesh experience on the pilot study of IFF from drug trafficking. The pilot study started in September 2020. But before I start, I would like to draw your attention that why we want to measure IFF. Just like many other jurisdictions, Bangladesh is also committed to attain the goals of SDG. As a result, it has been integrated into our national policy. Since IFF is very much related to money laundering, it has been money laundering, and Bangladesh government has formulated a strategy to prevent money laundering and terrorist financing. And the first strategy of that strategy paper is to conduct a study to find IFF and the destination. And the lead agency to implement this action item was Bangladesh Financial Intelligence Unit, which is the central agency to prevent money laundering and terrorist financing in Bangladesh. So unfortunately, Bangladesh did not have any kind of study related to this, and we did study some of the methodology of some international organizations, but we could not come to any conclusion as to which methodology should be used. At this time, UNODC, UNCTAD, and ESCAP came up with a proposal, and the proposal came up with the measurement of IFF associated with drugs and drug trafficking. Now, why did we accept the proposal is that you see the Bangladesh map. Bangladesh shares borders with India and Myanmar, and though Bangladesh is not a significant narcotic producer, but geography puts it at the heart of three major Asian drug trade routes, that is the Golden Wedge, Golden Triangle, and Golden Crescent. Unfortunately, this makes the country a very lucrative transit and for the drugs regions. And not only that, it is a transit, but also Bangladesh has been affected by the drug trafficking and all the abuses. So it all started with, we accepted the proposal, and all started with the kickoff meeting. And there were national focal point, which was BFIU, and consequently there were regional and national consultant. And Bangladesh UNODC project office also played the local support. There has been numerous virtual meetings and 3 national level workshops with all the stakeholders. Initially, we identified 23 organizations, and and the UNODC consultant and IFF experts explained the methodology and the tools of the drug supply and drug demand, and the data collection process started. And the data collection process was a very challenging task, since there had been a lack of data availability. And after a lot of thorough engagement, the key stakeholders and data providers were the Department of Narcotics Controls and the National Addiction Treatment Center and National Institute of Mental Health and other law enforcement agencies. And we want to, and after a thorough consultation of UNODC, the data availability assessment and qualitative interview were done with the stakeholders, and data collection was done. So in Bangladesh, the most frequently consumed and trafficked drug are the heroin, yaba, fentanyl, buprenorphine, and most of them are not produced within the country borders, but imported from other countries, that is from India and mostly from Myanmar. And they are also the export countries. But unfortunately, we could not have any data on export or re-export of drug from Bangladesh. So the study considered drug price and drug consumption as the baseline data for estimating IFF, and these were determined through interviewing and surveying the BD part experts who shared their knowledge and experience. And the data consumption data were gathered from the National Institute of Mental Health. They had a general population survey, which was a key source of data. And data was also collected from drug treatment centers from both government institutes and NGOs. Finally, the estimation of outward IFF associated with drugs uses the drug seizures at the national level, which means by all the seizures carried out by corresponding law enforcement agencies. If we see the result, I'm showing the final result, which is the taking into account the 5 years of data for the 4 types of drugs that I mentioned earlier, that were considered for this study, and the total yearly average of outward IFF associated with drugs is around 480 million, which is the seizure data basically. So the challenges that we faced to conduct the study when it started, the COVID pandemic also started, which delayed the whole process. And like all the countries who participated in this type of pilot, data insufficiency, data availability was a big challenge, and there has been no central database, so the information were scattered across the agencies, and there has been a lack of interagency coordination because everyone works on their own way. They have a different mechanism, and there is no proper record keeping and database management, which was very challenging for data collection. And since there were varieties type of stakeholders and professions like law enforcement agencies, militias, drug addiction treatment center, it was very challenging to conduct to collect the data and conduct the study. But there are some benefits of this project, like this is the first ever initiative to measure IFF in Bangladesh. So since I told you, there has been a lot of interagency, there has been a very engaging program, and so the interagency collaboration and coordination enhanced, and this gave the opportunity to work with different stakeholders in a single platform with a common goal, and that enhanced the awareness of the stakeholders then was as to why we need to measure the IFF, and the UNODC experts and the IFF experts and the UNODC consultant shared their expertise, which also enhanced the expertise of the relevant stakeholders, which is the basic goal of this project, to enhance the capacity of the stakeholders so that they can do it on their own. So that was one of the basic benefits. And Going forward, what we want to do is we need to, build capacity. We need to go on with the awareness building and capacity building of all the relevant stakeholders. And we definitely need to build an interagency coordination mechanism for collecting and supplying data on IFF and its measurement. Source that the country is losing a lot of money, and drug is not the only component. We
you're
because these
breaking.
are.
Julia, you're
Can you hear
breaking.
me?
Yes, we can. Maybe you might wish to put off the
Okay,
video.
so going forward. Okay, going forward, we want to explore our other IFF initiatives because this drug is not the only component. There are other components like corruption, tax practices. So we would also like to measure those and identify. Thank you so much. That's all from me.
Thank you, Julia, for sharing the perspectives from Bangladesh, particularly regarding IFFs from drug trafficking. There is a question in the chat. It says, which dark number estimation did you take into account to estimate the IFF? It's a question coming from Ovary Stefan. Or Ovary, can you maybe elaborate on your question, if you can speak up as well?
Yeah. If I
And introduce yourself as well.
I'm a strategic analyst from Belgium, and I see you said that it was based on the drug seizure. Did you take into account that there's a dark number, and which proportion did you take into account then?
We did not use, I do not understand the term dark number, but the seizure data came from the that was from the law enforcement agency. Number counted.
I'm sorry, I've lost the sound. I didn't hear your answer.
Well, I'm not familiar with the dark number estimation, but the seizure amount was collected from the law enforcement agencies. They seized the drugs from the dealers and the miscreants. So that is the number, not a dark number.
Okay, so by dark number, I mean, so seizure is only a fraction of what is really circulation. So yeah. So it was to see if you made estimate of what is not seized, actually.
No, the estimation is the seizure. What has been seized.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Maybe Julia, just have one or two questions here. What do you think are the key takeaways from this experience in terms of best practices and lessons learned?
Okay, so the key takeaway is Bangladesh need to have a central database so that we can have the seizure amount of data, or we did not have the export data. So without a proper database, without a available data, this is a very challenging task. And IFF is basically challenging because the data tends to be hidden. It is illicit. So the best practice would be to have a kind of mechanism or use the methodology as well as enhance the capacity of the stakeholders and have a integrated mechanism to basically have the data availability.
And what advice would you give to countries that would want to start the estimation of IFFs in the future?
Well, from Bangladesh point of view, I would rather suggest that before you start this kind of piloting or this kind of project, you should be able to identify the data sources and whether these data matches the methodology part, and also have a very good coordination mechanism with the stakeholders, because since it's a pilot project and everyone has their own way of work, it gets very challenging and make them understand the importance of the measuring IFF.
Thank you very much. I know you already tackled this bit, but maybe you can just elaborate about your future plans to continue the estimation process. Do you have those specific plans?
Well, yes, so far we are yet to get the UNODC report, and it will be approved from the government. And as I have mentioned earlier, that drugs is not the only component of IFF. We would like to explore the other sources like corruption, tax, and other crimes related IFF, and we would like to measure that.
And there is another question in the chat, says that appears to be problematic in Bangladesh. So what methodologies do you think can be implemented to address the data gaps?
To have a central database.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I had a lot of questions, but I think most of the issues you seem to have already addressed in there. So thank you very much, Julia, for sharing your presentation, and I think it's quite insightful. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
At this point, I would like to invite Ms. Anastasia Margaret from ESCAP to share the experiences of similar work on commercial IFFs from Uzbekistan. So Anastasia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Alec. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me clearly? Everything good?
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Great, thank you. I would like to tell about our experiences in measuring illicit financial flows in Uzbekistan, which is the second country for which we're in a pilot project at ESCAP, and this is the second country for which we tested the suggested methodological guidelines of measuring illicit financial flows. Our experiences were quite common to those of Kyrgyzstan. However, in different countries, there are different agencies responsible for measuring the indicator 1641. In Uzbekistan, the indicator was assigned to the Academy of General Prosecutor's Office. So basically everything dealing with illicit financial flows is the responsibility of the prosecutor's office. Thus, we worked with the Academy. Academy quickly established a group of institutions who had access to data to further implement the measurement process. So we as ESCAP, we worked with the Academy of General Prosecutor's Office to improve the statistical capacity, and other stakeholders like Tax Authority and Customs Authority. We have conducted the risk estimation together with the Academy, and it had been clear from this estimation that the main risks of IFFs in Uzbekistan are related to trade and tax evasion by various sizes of companies, not only large businesses, but also small businesses and also individuals. We also have found a potential risk from trans-border remittances. Out of all suggested methods in Uzbekistan, 3 were used with results. Two of them are trade-related methods. Partner country method that focuses on trade gaps in trade between the focal country and the trading partners. Price filter methods that focuses on mispricing or price abnormalities in trade between the focal country and the partner countries. And we also tried to use the method of flows of offshore capital by country. And here we have presented some results. Results are a range. The estimation was for a few years between 2017 and 2020. What had been discovered for Uzbekistan is that significantly larger value for IFFs comes actually from trade. According to one method, the total illicit financial flows were between $17 to $27 billion in different years. Second method showed a little bit lower result, but this is quite normal for that method, between $11 to $20 billion in different years. Also, we found that in Uzbekistan, there is no prevalence in trade IFFs, no prevalence or incoming or outgoing illicit financial flows. So it's almost equal value rate of incoming and outgoing illicit financial flows, at least in trade. Uzbekistan is quite actively engaged in international trade currently. Regarding the method of offshore wealth, it proved that it didn't have quite a large impact on the economy of Uzbekistan. So total value of IFF from offshore tax evasion was between $1 to $5 million in different years. So these are the main results, the main discoveries in that we have got together with the focal agencies in this project. There were, of course, challenges, and challenges are quite common to what other countries have experienced. Data availability, limits to data, challenges in connectivity between institutions, and lack of data sharing. Also, there is quite a big challenge of statistical capacity that needs to be improved. And we also faced the challenge of lack of formalization of the indicator 16.41 itself, because in Uzbekistan, the clear understanding of what is included in this indicator was actually lacking. Among the lessons learned, there's quite a big need for consolidation of statistical data in the country. There has to be improvement and legislation, for example, in declaring the offshore capital, which is currently not happening in Uzbekistan. Also, there is quite a shortage of data on the multinational companies working in this country. Thus, we could not use the tax-related methods, tax avoidance, by the multinational corporations. And quite a lot of adjustments of trade-related data were missing just because those records were not kept. And going forward, Uzbekistan will try and adapt the currently suggested methods of measuring IFFs. There's going to be a continuation of training to improve the statistical capacity in Uzbekistan, alongside with developing national mechanism for the further implementation of methods, including data sharing between the institutions. And also, country would like to focus on also measuring other IFFs, not only trade-related and tax-related IFFs, those IFFs that come from drugs and illegal markets are also quite interesting and need to be measured and may have potentially big impact on the economy of Uzbekistan. Thank you for your attention. Alik, back to you.
Thank you, Anastasia. You'll be back on the spot just in due course. So colleagues, do you have any comments and reactions to the experiences from Uzbekistan? So I guess so far I noticed that the issues are turning to be similar. I think in terms of data availability. Madvan, was that a hand up? You are muted. Mr. Palan? Okay.
I'm muted.
You are muted.
Please type in the chat.
Can you put your questions in the chat? We cannot hear you. Okay, so if there are no questions,
Thank you.
I think Anastasia, we can proceed to have another cracker in terms of a few more questions on the Mentimeter before we go to the next set of countries. So colleagues, another
Dear
sort
colleagues,
of
can you please follow the second link for our second very short poll and click the thumbs up for us to see if you can access the poll. You can either click on the link on your computer or just do it with your phone. Thank you. We see a lot of reactions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Should we proceed?
yes, please.
Thank you. We'd like to ask you, what do you think are the main threats or implications of illicit financial flows for economies and societies? You can type in a few words or phrases that you think would be threats of the presence of illicit financial flows. So we see our word cloud forming, and main takeaway is that money laundering and corruption are the big threats. Common themes also include loss of revenue, loss of funds, public health. But most seem to agree that corruption and money laundering would be the main implications. Let us proceed. Thank you. Thank you for voting. We have one more question to you. There's quite a lot of reactions. Do we quite agree with all the mentioned themes? What do you think? Our next question to you would be, what do you think are the main sources of IFFs? And that may be quite different in different countries. But we only give you the choice of 3 options because we know that if we give you all choices, you will vote for all. And this is also quite correct. But what would be the main sources of illicit financial flows as you think? And this is also part of the work done when the project of pilot testing illicit financial flows measuring methods were implemented in the pilot countries. We did those surveys to measure the risks. As we can see, drug trafficking and tax evasion and avoidance are the most popular answers, the most common theme. This is exactly what we are focusing on in this session. And our project in Asia was also partly dedicated to measuring drug trafficking, illicit financial flows, and other crime-related IFFs, but also tax evasion and trade. Thank you so much. Back to you, Alec.
Thank you, Anastasia. And so at this point, I would like to invite my colleague, Ms. Fazana Shamin from ECA to moderate the next session, which will focus on commercial IFFs from two African countries. Fazana, you have the floor now, please.
Thank you so much, Alec. Thank you so much, colleagues, and warm greetings and a warm welcome to this session. In this session, we will be listening to the experiences from 2 of the 11 African pilots. As Alec briefly mentioned, there were a total of 11 pilots in Africa, and the countries mainly focused on tax and commercial related IFFs because of the relevance and the country priorities of that kind of illicit financial flows in Africa. So just to give you a hint, to change the test of the setup, in this session, we will be very informal. We will be asking some questions from our colleagues and we will listen from them. So I am Farzana Sharmin. I work with Economic Commission for Africa. And allow me to introduce our 2 colleagues, Mr. Lamek Odada from Namibia. Lamek, you may wave your hand. Lamek was the national consultant who supported the illicit financial flows estimation in Namibia. And we are also joined here today by Joseph Tembo. Mr. Joseph Tembo is assistant director from the Zambia Statistics Agency. Joseph, can you open your camera for some seconds if you have connectivity problem? Thank you so much, Joseph. I can see you. Yeah. So directly to the main session, Lamek, I will ask you a question. So if you can tell us a bit about the kind of illicit financial flows that Namibia was facing, and were you able to measure that illicit financial flows in your country? Over to you, Lamek.
Thank you, Fazana. Good evening. It's 5 o'clock in Namibia, and I'm happy to be sharing the experience of the work that we did in Namibia. Straight to the question, the kind of IFFs that we identified in Namibia were related to tax evasion of individuals, corruption, trade misinvoicing, multinational profit shifting. And again, the second part of the question is a yes answer, that we were able to use 2 methods and we came with estimates of percentages of figures that are still yet to be validated on the project that we did on the pilot testing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lamek. That is really a good news to all of us, and we will be learning more as we proceed. But now coming to our other colleagues from Zambia, Joseph, can you resonate with this experience where Zambia was also facing the same kind of IFFs, and were you able to estimate the extent of illicit financial flows in Zambia?
Thank you, moderator. Yes, indeed. The issues are more or less similar, but specific to Zambia, I think we concentrated more on the trade-related and the profit shifting because of the issues we thought were of great importance to us at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Just to share with the broader audience, is kind of understandable because most of the African countries are commodity dependent, and a huge prevalence of IFF can be observed in the extractive industries, or one of the main commodities that the countries are dependent on. So thank you so much for that. Now I will go to Lamek to share a bit about, since this is a statistical exercise, which method did you use to measure the extent of IFFs in Namibia? What kind of data did you need, and were you able to get all those data from your National Statistical Office? Over to you, Lamek.
Thank you once again. So in Namibia, we only concentrated on 2 methods. One, given the fact that the time was a factor, a very big factor, so we couldn't apply all the 6 methods. And secondly, what we did first before we started by the pilot project, we looked at the availability of data. So the availability of data played a big role in choosing the methodologies. We therefore went on to pick the partner country method, whereby the data was the data that we got from Comtrade. And again, this data in Comtrade is data that is fed into Comtrade from the Namibia Statistics Agency. We then went and also estimated our IFFs using the price filter method. Under the price filter method, now we got the data from ASECUDA. ASECUDA is housed under the Namibia Revenue Authority. So under this price filter method, we used two methods. We used the market values, and also we used a statistical method whereby we were able to compute the lower bound and the upper bound prices, and anything beyond or anything above, anything beyond the upper bound and anything below the lower bound, we then flagged those as possible IFFs. Then we continued to narrow it down to get to the results. On the issue of whether we got all the data, at the beginning it was a big problem, and you can remember, Fazana, we were working very closely. We went back and forth several times until we got the data that we needed. So yes, we were able to get the data, and going forward, I think we now know how to extract that data and also the sources of data. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lamek. One other questions relevant to your just the experience that you shared. It also came out quite strongly from all the pilots that, you know, the collaboration among all the involved national agencies in terms of getting their buy-in, in terms of getting them on board was critical. So can you also share with us a bit more about the collaboration? How was it among the various government agencies that established the technical working group for estimation of illicit financial flows in Namibia?
Thank you very much. So including myself and the UN agencies, that was specifically the Office of the Resident Coordinator and UNICEF, who are very much involved. There were 10 other institutions. So we had the lead agency, that was the Bank of Namibia. We had the Namibia Statistics Agency, Financial Intelligence Center, Namibia Revenue Agency, National Planning Commission, the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources, the Ministry of Mines and Energy, the Namibia Financial Institutions Supervisory Authority, the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Namibian Police, and of course myself as the national consultant, and the UN agencies, like I mentioned before. So how it worked for us was, right at the beginning of the project came through a request from the Office of the Resident Coordinator to the Bank of Namibia and requested the Bank of Namibia to be the lead agency. The Bank of Namibia then accepted that invitation, and then I joined the Bank of Namibia, where we then picked this other institution based on their involvement in issues to deal with IFFs. So that's how we came up with these 10 institutions. And what I would like to inform anybody listening today is that we are actually expanding those institutions now to include, for example, the Office of the Prosecutor General. So that's the number of institutions that we had together and under the leadership of the Bank of Namibia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it appears that the technical working group was a combination of government agencies that not only dealt with the relevant sectors that were affected by the illicit financial flows, but if you can look closely to the set of government agencies, they are also the kind of agencies that most likely will come up with the policy measures to stop the illicit financial flows. So it is a process of statistical estimation and build on that, go one step further and develop the policy measures. That is excellent. Thank you so much, Lamek. Now I will go back to Joseph with the same set of questions. For your easy reference, I will just quickly repeat.
Yes.
So Joseph, can you please share with us the methods that you use in Zambia to measure IFFs and what kind of data you needed and were you able to get all this data from your national statistical offices? Over to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. For us, it was very easy because I'm actually coming from the statistics agency itself, so data was readily available. And also complemented by data from the customs, the Zambia Revenue Authority. So I think on the data side, we didn't have much challenge. because we have been collaborating even before the IFFs came on board, because we already had an MOU with the Revenue Authority and also with the Bank of Zambia. So information sharing, I think, has been there through another outfit called the Balance of Payment Statistical Committee, where most of these agencies belong to. So it was indeed a marvelous experience because for us, I think the team was actually constituted by our Secretary to Cabinet, or to our Secretary to the Treasury, and the composition is more or less similar to Namibia, but us, we went further also and just included some think tanks, as it were. And of course, after undertaking the exercise, it was realized that there's need to expand like Namibia because of the other issues that came up. Of course, the prosecutions, as it were, it is one issue that came about. And we are really very excited about that, actually. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You already covered a bit on the last part that I asked Lamek, but do you want to also add to anything about this collaboration? You mentioned the many different agencies that were part of the TWG, Technical Working Group for the IFF estimation in Zambia. Do you want to add a bit more, or you are happy with your answer?
For us, the collaboration was indeed too strong. At the local scene, we collaborated a lot with the members of the Technical Working Group. I think that one was fantastic. Then on the external side, we really collaborated with yourselves, UNCTAD and ECA, through our national consultant who was engaged through I think ECA, Mr. Shebo Nadishebo. So the collaboration, I think, was excellent, especially that Mr. Shebo Nadishebo is a former member of staff of the agency, so it was very easy to relate. I can submit like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's just mutually reinforcing to the experiences of both Namibia and Zambia that, you know, the technical working group was very broad. It included all the relevant agencies, and it really helped in terms of having the enthusiasm also, and to have that policy awareness that, you know, is important. We have to estimate it is one step towards eventually stopping the leakage. So very gladly, I would like to report that, you know, all our pilots have actually ended up coming up with some estimates using at least one or two of the recommended methodologies. They have already published, and there is an infographic report. I can ask one of the colleagues to please put in the chat maybe the link to that infographics report. But while the colleagues can browse through it, I would like to ask to both of you, if you could tell us a bit about your preliminary estimations from the measurement work with UNCTAD and ECA. And, you know, if you also share with us like that estimation, that even primary estimation, how do they contribute your policy measures to fight illicit financial flows in countries? So I will go to Lamek first.
Thank you once again. The pilot exercise was a very, very important exercise. This is because we are now able to measure these IFFs on our own going forward, of course, thanks to UNCTAD, ECA, the Fazana herself, Bojan, Amandine, the whole team that assisted us in doing this. Now, if you look at before we had these estimations, and all these things are happening around us, we know they are happening, but we don't have a voice to come out and say, this is the impact. For now, we are very confident, even though the figures may have not been cleared to say this is the actual figure, the information is already going out there. So from the Namibian perspective, what we are saying is that taking the information out there is greater than having the actual figure. At least these companies, the people who are avoiding taxation, the people who are busy with trade misinvoicing, multinational companies who are shifting profits, will now be able to start knowing that, okay, now the country is able to measure, somehow we will be breaking the law. And policymakers are now able to put in policies in conjunction with these results to go and say, okay, maybe it's high time we now say that if you are caught in these illegal activities, then we criminalize it. So it's a very, very important exercise that really helped us. And as I can say, the kind of expertise that we gained throughout this exercise is tremendous. I can't measure it, but I can assure you that today, even if you tell me to go pull data as back as in the year 2010, I'm able to do that and I'm able to arrive at results. So what is coming out clearly from our view is that the message is out there. The people now know that we can measure and we can quantify the wrong things that they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lamek. So Joseph, if you can share your experience, the same thing, some bit on your estimation and how did it contribute to your policy measures?
Exactly. Riding on Lamek's submission. Indeed, those are sentiments that resonate with me, representing Zambia. For us, when we started this exercise, we didn't know what it is going to flag out. But indeed, the information was there. The flag was raised to say, indeed, there exist IFFs in Zambia. But the extent to which we didn't know at that time. But the preliminary figure, I think you have it from the data we submitted. I think it hovers around 44.9 billion. And most of this was through the misinvoicing channel during the period 2012 to 2020. So for us, this, I think, is a big trigger in the review of policy related to that kind of arrangement, so that I think government can now engage fully and just try to see how we can keep this this illicit activity, because you see Zambia is very much dependent on copper. Our mineral, it's a mineral country. So the little that we need to get from the proceeds should remain in country. But if such huge amounts start flying out, then it is really affecting our developmental agenda. So indeed, I think government is alive to this, and I'm sure from our recommendations, it's one of the things we've put on the table to say this work needs to continue. You might be aware that we just started, we did all this in almost 6 months. So given time, I think taking advantage of this forum, I think Zambia is really willing to move forward, ask for further assistance from you colleagues, so that we could measure even other methods which our colleagues tried. Because as you might be aware, we just attempted to do one of the two we chose. We chose the partner country and the profit shifting, but we could only manage the partner country. So we would want to see how we can be assisted to measure further other methods, so that we indeed know what it is that we are dealing with. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lamek, you wanted to add something? I saw your hands up.
Yes. For Namibia, the figure that we got is around 12% of the GDP, and that's ranging between 2018 to 2020, based on the clear data set that we could get. So where we couldn't get the data, we dropped those figures out, but we got 12% of the GDP from the period 2018 to 2020. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I think I thank both of you for sharing these estimates. It's important to report. We all know that all the countries are pilot countries. They have just started estimation, and the scopes were only a subset of the total illicit financial flows that are most likely affecting those countries. But it's a step to go forward, and all the pilots in Africa have already made the presentation of their preliminary estimates internally at their country level to the technical working group. And we all gathered together in June last year, where we made the presentation to each other. So just to add to what Joseph also said, there is an action plan for all these pilots to deepen this work, to continue working on it and expand the estimation techniques, because there are 6, and the maximum that the countries could manage to do within that short time frame was 2, and in some cases 1. So thank you so very much for sharing your experience on that. I will ask one final question to both of you, to the aspiring other countries. So what will be your most important piece of advice to give to a country who will be wishing to start this IFF estimation journey, and eventually to report to SDG indicator 16.4.1. And in that, if you can also touch a bit in your advice, whether, if any, you have any specific advice for the National Statistical Office's involvement, as it is a SDG reporting database. So this time I will go to Joseph first and then come back to Lamek. So Joseph, very briefly, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this should excite, I think, other countries out there, because, you know, there is a statement to say if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So basically, I think countries really need to start thinking of how to go that route. The best advice I can give is, since already some countries have attempted, I think it would be important to network and learn a few lessons from countries, and also make sure that there is that official engagement with the institutions like yourselves, UNCTAD, ECA, and the rest, so that, you know, the proper training we got can also be extended to them, so that they are very, very, very confident in measuring. Like my colleague Lamek is saying, he's confident even in his sleep, he can still churn out the numbers. So that's the level of confidence we want other member states to have, because us, we are the pioneers this side, fine, but I think more needs to be done so that others can come on board. For statistical offices, I come from a statistical office. I think it's very important that there is collaboration depending on the structure. Some are led by statistical agencies, like for Zambia, others it's an intelligence center, but I think it's just a collaboration so that issues of analytics are dealt with, and there's just smooth execution of work. I think that's the best I can do for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lamek?
Yes, thank you very much. I will now also ride on what Mr. Joseph has just explained. Again, there's no need of reinventing the wheel. Other countries have tried it, they have the expertise, collaborate with them. Secondly, if you can create the awareness in advance to the people, that is the institutions that you are going to work with, such that by the time the process starts, they're already aware of what this is all about, and then they will be excited to help. For the statistical offices, my advice to them is, please, please, please try to ensure that you capture the correct data and you keep the data, because the availability of the data is one of the bigger issues, even from our last meeting in Addis the other time. So for statistical offices, can we improve on data that we keep so that when the process starts, it's very easy to do the exercise? Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Lamek. Thank you so much, Joseph, for sharing your insights, your experience, and a big congratulations for your leadership in this pilot phase. So now we have question answer session. I'm sure we are delayed. So colleagues, you are most welcome to put any questions you might have in the chat. Or if you have any burning questions now, please feel free to raise it now. I see no hands. In the interest of time, Alec, may I invite you to take us through, and then maybe colleagues can put their questions in the chat. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Fazana, and to our panelists, Joseph and Lamek. Thanks so much for sharing the experiences and the insights from your respective countries. There is a question that's actually in the chat. Do you think that
I believe it is not directly to the tax and commercial based, it's human trafficking. Yes. Maybe Diana will be the appropriate person. Okay, absolutely. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you.
Yeah, I think maybe our colleagues from UNODC can pick up, but I think as we've seen some countries, actually the conceptual framework treats it then as an IFF. But maybe UNODC colleagues, maybe you might wish to respond to that question.
Hi, Alik.
Heman, go ahead.
Yes. No, indeed. I mean, the short answer to this question is yes. It's definitely able to is another type of activity that could be estimated. We're going to have an example in the next session, not specifically on human trafficking, but on migrant smuggling.
Okay.
So this is also definitely something that could definitely be tackled.
Okay, thanks so much. And so maybe before I invite Henan to moderate the last session, Anastasia has, is it 1 or 2 questions again on the Mentimeter?
We do have 2 questions on the Mentimeter. Let me share it with you. This is our final poll. And let me also give you a link. Thank you very much for pressing thumbs up. We currently have 111 participants in this session, which is quite a lot. Thank you. We'll just ask you two questions. We have told you, dear participants, a lot about where IFF measurement methods have been tested. However, we have not yet finished. Please give your inputs into what regions have pilot tested the IFF estimation methods. This is good to see that a lot voted for Asia and Africa. And this is exactly 2 regions that have presented their results so far. However, our last session is going to focus on the results from Latin America also, and it's good to see that a lot also voted for that region. Thank you very much. I will proceed to the next question. How do you think, what were the main challenges in estimating illicit financial flows in the pilot countries that you have seen the results for? Data limits, data. So again, we are seeing the word cloud forming currently. Lack of data, most themes are on data quality and availability and the lack of it. However, we also see some points on institutional cooperation of agencies, intra-agency cooperation, which is also quite a big challenge. Thank you, dear participants. Thank you. Back to you, Alik.
Thank you, Anastasia, and I can see a good summary of the presentation so far, as seen in the questions. Just a quick note, I think, before we go into the last session, I think some of the questions we are answering and addressing them in the chat, so we may not necessarily speak out. So if you put up some questions, our team of experts behind the scenes will be able to respond. So keep tabs on the chat. So at this point, I would like to invite Henan Epstein from UNODC to moderate the last session, which will focus on crime-rated IFFs based on the work done in Latin America. Henan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Alik. You can hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, depending on where you're connected from. This is the last session of the day, so welcome. This is you made it till the end, so that's very good. Let's get right into the session so we can get started with it. We're gonna have two interventions in this session, like already Alik and Anastasia already mentioned. It's gonna be focused on work that was done in Latin America. The first one will be focused on Mexico. I see already Oscar is connected. So the first person to intervene will be Mr. Oscar Jaime Bello from the director, the general director of the government of INEGI on statistics of governance and public security and justice. He will share some experience on the measurement of drug trafficking, on the measurement of drug trafficking and migrant smuggling related illicit financial flows, which was produced during pilot testing activities conducted in Mexico between 2018 and 2020. And the second intervention will be focusing on Colombia. So the UNODC office in Colombia will share the experience with the measurement of drug trafficking related illicit financial flows. Carried out, this was carrying out using rich baseline data on cocaine trafficking, including also some detailed information on income and costs generated by criminal organizations. For this presentation, we have three distinguished speakers from the UNODC team in the regional office for the Andean region and the Southern Cone. These are Ms. Laura Castro. I'm going to ask Laura, if possible, to turn on her camera. She's the leader in the thematic analysis area in the Colombia office of UNODC. Welcome, Laura. Also, Mr. Camilo Andrés Albarracín Barrera, qualitative and quantitative research assistant, also in UNODC in the Colombian the office in Colombia. Also, welcome, Camilo. And then finally, there will be some also an intervention from Ivan Ernesto Piraquive Lopez, I believe. He's a socioeconomic measurement advisor, also within the office of the UNODC office in Colombia. Welcome, Ivan, as well. So if you don't mind, we can get started. I think first we'll go with Mexico. So Oscar, I wanted to, if you agree, pose a few questions to you, and then you can expand on them, maybe 2-3 minutes per question in the interest of time. So the first question would be, please tell us about your country experience in general in estimating the IFFs, including methodology, including what subjects you've covered, etc. Please, the floor is yours, Jaime. Oscar.
Thank you, Hernan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me in this seminar about the experience of INEGI Mexico. Well, I first must mention that INEGI participated with UNODC, the UNODC INEGI Center of Excellence, and UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, in the methodology that was developed from around 2018 to 2020, that finally was the result was the conceptual framework for the statistical measurement of illicit financial flows, that it was released at the end of October, at the end of 2020. Also in 2021, UNODC and the UNODC INEGI Center of Excellence developed a pilot study to measure illicit financial flows in some countries in the Latin American region, specifically Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, and Mexico. So in general, that has been the experience that INEGI has in this in the measurement of illicit financial flows. Hernan, thank you.
Thank you very much, Oscar. A second question then. What do you think were the key good practices and lessons that you've learned from this experience that you could maybe share with the rest of the countries and the audience, so they can also take something and learn from your experience as well?
Sure. Well, following the conceptual framework for the statistical measurement of illicit financial flows, I must say that there are four main categories of illicit financial flows: illicit commercial and tax, illegal markets, corruption and exploitation activities, and financing of crime and terrorism. For the case of Mexico, illicit financial flows, the pilot study included the following illegal market activities that were estimated: smuggling of migrants, that was the inward and outward illicit financial flows, and also drug trafficking, using estimates of heroin inward illicit financial flows, cocaine inward and outward IFFs, and methamphetamine inward illicit financial flows. So those were the categories that were used for smuggling of migrants and drug trafficking in the pilot that was conducted in 2021.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Oscar. Are there any specific maybe lessons that you would share on what you've learned from this experience on estimating the drug trafficking and the migrant smuggling activities that you could point out in terms of data coordination, data sharing within these different institutions as well? This is something that was touched upon also in other experiences. Maybe there were some good practices there as well.
Sure. The first one was a challenge was to adapt the methodology to the regional and national context. That was the first one, as well as the specific illicit market. For the cooperation, two challenges stand out. First, to consider the diversity of relevant institutions and the institutional engagement. That's a difficult one, and it has been mentioned before. Also, the challenges for data collections were a scarcity of sources of information, also the confidentiality of some of the information, non-continuous and non-current sources, and the lack of disaggregated information to develop a more detailed analysis. In the case of smuggling of migrants for Mexico, Mexico had a good series of service on the borders, on the south and the north. So there were estimates for the inflows of migrants coming from other countries, entering Mexico from the southern border, and then going into the territory to get to the north in order to go to be able to cross the border to the United States. So the service were able to capture not just for volumes, but also for specific questions regarding the type of smugglers that are contact in their country of origin and also at the border of Mexico. So that made possible to have estimates for inward and outward illicit financial flows, as well as in the northern border, again, with Mexicans, mainly Mexican smugglers, and then what were the prices in order to cross the border to the United States. So that was very good, but actually with the pandemic, those services were stopped, and Mexico doesn't have any more, at least not now, but there are efforts by IOM, UN agency regarding with migration, to finance again this service. This service had not, in this service, INEGI is not involved directly. Those are collected by academic institutions, but are quite good, very good service. So we hope we can continue having data from them. So that's just one example of the difficulties.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Oscar. So it's very important to have these base data and these elements to collect this base data that you need specifically for these specific illegal activities. In this case, like these surveys and this information on prices. So I think that's a very good takeaway. A very good takeaway. What do you think are the main benefits of producing these IFF estimates, besides, of course, the compilation of the SDG indicator that we all know about? What other benefits do you think are to a country in producing these estimates?
Sure. Well, regarding data collection, the benefits were the use of data for something that has never been done before, as well as identifying data gaps. Data gaps were important. As I mentioned, it was good to know, in the example of smuggling of migrants, that data availability can help us to, in this case, UNODC and Center of Excellence, to make the estimates. But regarding drugs, it was not easy to have data at the national level. So most of the data were drawn from public sources from the US on prices, also on seizures. So that's important to know the data, not only the data gaps, but also the limitations on the availability of sources, specifically in Mexico at the national level. So that was a good lesson and benefit also. Development efforts also to generate necessary data for the estimates in an accessible way so they can be used in a timely manner. That was another one. There was an increase in the analytical capacities to understand how illicit markets work. So that was a very good one. Also, partnerships were developed by providing awareness of the importance of public policies to address illicit financial flows, and also to start dialogues between countries on measuring these specific problems of illicit financial flows. That would be my comments there, Fernand. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Oscar. Very, very good points indeed. And then last question, if it's okay, if you can tell us a little bit about your country's future plans for measuring IFF after this first step.
Of course. At INEGI, we are currently conducting a research project to adapt the methodology designed by UNODC and UNCTAD, giving priority to identifying systematic, stable, reliable, and available sources of information. We plan to develop this project during 2023 in the following areas. The project will begin with an exploratory phase of Mexican regulations, specialized literature on the subject and international practices, as well as the various existing estimation methodologies. To narrow the project, this study will continue with the work done by UNODC INEGI Center of Excellence regarding the smuggling of migrants and drug trafficking. Subsequently, it is necessary to identify public, private, and civil society organizations with data on different types of illicit financial flows and their periodicity. Finally, the project will empirically test UNODC's methodology with data obtained to define a strategy to estimate illicit financial flows in Mexico. So that is the project that we have for 2023.
Great, thank you, Oscar. Very, very exciting plans for this year and the next few years. Thank you very much for your intervention. This has been very, very enlightening. In the interest of time, I would like now to move on to the last presentation of this session, the last intervention from Colombia. So I would like to invite Ms. Laura Castro to introduce experience of Colombia in measuring IFFs from cocaine trafficking in the country. Please, Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning. I apologize for my difficulty speaking English. Received a cordial greeting from the Integrated System for the Monitoring Illicit Flows in Colombia of UNODC. In Colombia, CINCI annually established the area of coca cultivation, cocaine production, and evidence of illegal government exploitation. Within this framework, the CINCI team contributes to the design and the implementation of proposed methodology for the estimation of illicit financial flows for the cocaine and illegal mini markets. In this case, my colleague Camila Albarracín will share the many aspects of the methodology, and my colleague Iván Viraquiven and I will be attentive to concerns.
Thanks, Laura, for that introduction. Please let me share our presentation. Can you confirm if you're seeing our presentation?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes, Camila.
Okay. As our colleagues have mentioned, every country has its own specificities. In the case of Colombia, our methodology was, let's say, proposed only for two illicit markets. In the first place, the gold exploitation and the cocaine markets were tried to be characterized using the methodology that we are going to present. We started from the point that we wanted to measure the flows into and out of the territory using a very strong methodology based on the UN system national account. Under this system, what we're trying to find is the equilibrium between supply and demand by product and by production units. So when we talk about the equilibrium by product, we're talking about how everything that is produced in a country or that has to be imported within a country has its representation in the demand matrix. So every product that is in a country has to be consumed by other industry, by the households, or finally has to be exported. When we talk about the production unit perspective, we're talking how about each one of these activities or agents that are involved within a market are using these products and how their economic structure works in order to make this balance possible. As I just mentioned, our methodology was based on the adaptation of the UN system of national accounts, that is the main system that almost all the state members of the United Nations use in order to make their national accountability systems. And we adapted in order to include these illicit products and illicit activities. The synthesis of the methodology that we applied can be, let's say, seen in this supply and use table, which accounts for the whole equilibrium that we were talking about. So row-wise, we have the products that are involved in an economy. In this case, we have coca leaves, cocaine base, cocaine chlorhydrate, the agrochemicals, transportation and security services. And column-wise, we can see the activities that are involved in this market. So as I just mentioned, we can see that each product has to be in equilibrium between supply and demand. And column-wise, we just see the activities that are involved. It's very important to notice that we did actually go beyond the task, because as you can see in this supply and use table, the EFFs are only vectors of international trade. So the outward EFFs are seen as how much of the production needed for this market can be supplied by the production matrix of our country. In this case, Colombia can't produce all the agrochemicals and chemical substances that are needed for the cocaine market. In this case, outward EFFs are conceived as that resources that have to leave the country in order to supply this need for agrochemicals and chemical substances. In the case of inward EFF, we are talking about all these surplus of production of cocaine in this case that is not consumed by our local market. So cocaine that is not used in another production processes or that is not consumed by our own consumers has to be exported. And in that scenario, we took two possible outcomes. If all the cocaine that is being exported from Colombia was valued at the price of our local market, we can see that our inward EFF is around $1.5 billion. But if that cocaine with the prices of the countries that is consuming that drug, we can see that the inward EFF can be around $10 billion. So it was really hard for us to actually measure where is the real scenario, but we know totally certainty that the EFS has to be between these two limits. This was for the cocaine market. In the case of the illicit exploitation gold market, we couldn't actually apply the whole methodology, mainly because two challenges. The first one was because we couldn't define, or the definition of what's illicit in Colombia, it's really hard to apply to this market, because in the gold market, you can have three scenarios: legal mining, informal mining, or illicit exploitation. So legal mining is where every link in the chain is legal. So we have legal production, legal distribution, and legal commercialization. But the Colombian government has made a really big effort in order to formalize this type of artisanal and traditional mining that has been in the country for years. But sometimes that border between informal and illicit is not very clear. And we found that making this whole conversation about what's illicit, the data available wasn't enough to apply the methodology, only to estimate the EFF. We tried, but there were some data gaps that didn't allow us to estimate the whole exercise. What we identified as best practices were mainly two. The first one was that we actually coordinate several spaces with key institutions of the national government, as the National Administrative Department of Statistics, the respective ministries of Justice and Law, Mines and Energy, and the National Police. They were key because some of the information that we needed in order to apply this methodology were given by these institutions, and they actually participated in the construction of the methodology. So without them, we couldn't have applied at least the cocaine example. Another best practice that we identified during this process is that the Colombia's IFF approach is based on a set of standards that is recommended by the United Nations. In that sense, as I just mentioned, the supply and use table is a statistical synthesis of the phenomenon. It is a representation of a coherent accounting table. It can serve as an instrument for macroeconomic analysis, and we take the job of homologating and adapting all of the activities and products using the international standards, the ISIC and the CPC. So these are our best practices. About learned lessons, and all our colleagues have mentioned, without data, we can't model anything. So as I just mentioned, the gap for the gold market was really big. We didn't have, unlike the cocaine market, enough indicators in order to apply the methodology. So one of the lessons that we had is that even if you build a strong methodology and a full theoretical model, you can do anything if you don't have data. So we assess the need for creating these lines of research, specifically in the illicit gold market. And on the cocaine market, we assess some lessons on the cocaine outward, on the cocaine inward EFF. On the outward EFF, we found that almost half of the demand for chemical substances come from external markets, but we are not sure at the moment of how these transactions are leading to the importation of these chemical substances. So we need to characterize the transactions, the actors, and develop tools for monitoring uncontrolled and controlled chemical substances in order to identify their origin. On the cocaine inward EFF, as we saw on the supply and use table, we are moving between two limits, but we are not really sure on what's the real estimation of the IFF. So we're trying to maximize what we can do on this point. Finally, on the future plan and interest in updating, we have found that the Colombian government is really interested in incorporating these estimations on their own national system of national accounts. And we, on the other hand, for the methodological side, we're trying to strengthen both of our methodologies. For the cocaine markets, we are trying to incorporate new dynamics that we have been seeing about how the coca producers are specializing in the extraction process, that we are not only exporting cocaine, but we are already exporting cocaine base and cocaine basic paste, and how to strengthen this last point of how to measure how much is returning to Colombia. About the illicit gold market, we're trying to negotiate with Colombian government institutions how to create these research lines that will allow us to understand this socioeconomic dynamics and context of the actors involved in the illicit extraction of gold, which will allow us to provide greater elements and knowledge about the relationship between activities and processes. That's like the whole scenario for Colombia in terms of measuring the IFF. Thanks for your attention. Here are our contacts if you want to ask anything. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Camilo. I believe there's no questions so far on the chat. I don't know if Ivan wanted to make a short intervention. It would have to be less than a minute if you have anything to add.
No, we don't have anything to add.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much to our colleagues in Colombia. Very interesting examples, and it's also good to know a case where further work is needed to actually get to the goal of measuring such data of gold mining. So Alik, with this, I think I would like to close this session. Alik, I would like to give the floor back to you. I believe my colleague Diana may also put some information on another side event that is going to happen tomorrow at the same time on crime statistics on the chat. Sorry, wanted to put that last mention that. Thank you very much, Alik.
Thank you, Henan, and thank you to our dear presenters from Mexico and Colombia for their insights. I think we're coming towards the end of our side event. Let me thank all the presenters, and just to highlight that there's a lot of information and links that have been posted in the chat, so you can always refer to those links and then maybe have a look on the various materials. We'll share whatever is shareable after getting approval from the presenters. We'll post up in our respective agency sites. So at this juncture, we're almost at the end, and I would like now to invite Bojan Nastav from UNCTAD to just give us some very brief closing remarks before I ask Alan.
Thank you, Alik, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I will be brief in the next hour of providing concluding remarks, but I think it'll be a very fast hour. So I think key takeaway points from today's event are, first of all, that the SDG indicator 16.4.1 on illicit financial flows custodian agencies, so that is UNCTAD and UNODC, are mandated and have worked on a statistical concepts and methodologies to measure illicit financial flows. So therefore, we have a definition for the statistical measurement of illicit financial flows in the form of a conceptual framework that was endorsed by the Statistical Commission last year, so at its 53rd session. The second thing that I would like to say is that the pilot achievements that have been made so far in those 22 countries are remarkable. And I think a huge congratulations and thanks to the presenters today for sharing their experience. And this has essentially led us to something that actually Angela said in the beginning. This is a work in progress. So we are only at an early stage at this moment. So further work is still ahead of us, not only by custodian agencies, such as refinement and further development of the methodologies, but also by the countries. You know, to measure, to tweak, to refine the estimates, to expand, which means this is an iterative and expansive process, not expensive, although it can be, but expansive, which means that we also cover more methods, more commodities, more sectors, and so on. And as such, it does require communication and collaboration. I like to say at 3 levels. Firstly, within the country. So among all the national institutions that have expertise, knowledge, data on illicit financial flows. Second, among the countries. So with your trading partners, with your other countries in the neighborhood and across the world. And thirdly, also with international agencies. So this is an international, a global effort to measure illicit financial flows at national levels. So Joseph has said previously, if you can't measure, you can't manage. Camilo just said a few minutes ago, if you don't have data, you don't have any models. So why are we doing this? Not because we are, let's say, freaks about statistics on illicit financial flows. Well, we can leave that aside, but truly because official, robust, and high-quality statistics are important to inform evidence-based policies to curb illicit financial flows. So let me draw it to a close at this end and say again, thank you everyone, and of course, good luck with all the work that comes.
Thank
Over
you,
to you, Alec.
Bojan.
Thanks.
Yeah, can I now invite Mr. Alan Kungu from ECA to for the very final closing remarks.
Well, so I'm standing between you and dinner. I like that. Thank you very much, Alec Nyasulu, and thank you very much, Boyan Nastav, and all the people who have spoken today. I'm so elated to have participated in this. I have learned a lot, especially from our colleagues who have been dealing with the crime side of IFFs. And I can tell you that I want to echo Boyan's observations, because having participated in a kickoff workshop in Nigeria, and we went there, we wanted to do something to do with measurement of IFF. And then we realized that before you do that, you had to define what IFFs were. Fortunately, UNCTAD and UNODC were already trading this journey, and this was in 2019. And then we had to realize that from what UNCTAD and UNODC were telling us, and what the Mbeki panel had also told us before, that IFF multifarious, they've got so many faces, and you have to involve as many people as possible in that ecosystem of IFFs. And so at that kickoff workshop, we saw that there was a need for prayer, thoughtful understanding of what IFFs were, who could be involved, and bring them on board in advance before you can actually identify which are the crucial IFFs that are affecting the country more. So you bring those stakeholders together, you work with them to identify the risks that the country is facing, and then because you have to get resources to address many of these things, and this is very important, you have to get resources from the government to address many of these things. You need evidence. So this evidence, in most cases, and in this particular case, is provided by you measuring and being sure how much. And when you get these figures, we had, was it Lamek or Joseph? I think it was Lamek, who came back and said that 12% of GDP, IFFs were about 12% of GDP in Namibia. When policymakers listen to that, I think they sit back and say, this is too much. We need to do something. So you talk about evidence-based, but this is powerful. The work we are doing looks like it's just statistical, but it's providing the evidence, and it is inspiring policy making. So at ECA, we are very delighted that in partnership with other UN regional commissions, we are talking about ECLAC, ESCAP, ESCA, and UNEC, and in close coordination and substantive support by UNCTAD and UNODC as the co-custodian agencies of Indicator 16.4.1 on total inwards and outwards illicit financial flows, ECA will be implementing a new project in Africa. This project aims to deepen the work of the measurement that was piloted by the 11th Tranche Development Account Project, which ended in June last year. And it will complement the statistical work with relevant policy measures to curb IFFs. So we want to continue to deepen the measurement work, but at the same time to link that to the policy work so that in a few years, we are able to talk about how these statistical measurements have also influenced the policy making so that more resources are allocated to curbing IFFs. And with the strengthened statistical capacity of the pilot countries to measure IFFs, this project will support countries to develop evidence-based policy responses to curb these flows and strengthen their economic resilience to achieve the 2030 Agenda and the Africa Union's Agenda 2063. Now, Boyan has talked about the globally agreed concepts and methods for measurements of IFFs and the feedback that we have had in this event from the pilots. These methodologies will now be refined and cascaded for global use. The target is produce regular high quality and timely statistics on Indicator 16.4.1 on IFFs by all countries. I can assure you that actually in Africa, we are having some of the other stakeholders looking at how we can monitor the policy side of things, how it is evolving on the continent. So we have seen the crucial role of establishing a national mechanism for collaboration in the tackling and measurement of IFFs among government agencies in the ecosystems. We realized from the pilot experiences that national circumstances, such as data availability, statistical capacity, relevant types of IFFs, and an overall whole government, but also whole society approach are essential to curb IFFs. We also found, as Boyan has said, that international, inter and intra-country cooperation is required to comprehensively address these cross-border flows. Therefore, under the auspices of this new project that ECA is going to implement with the other regional commissions, UNCTAD and UNODC, we will continue our collective efforts and legacy of the work of the measurement project that just ended last year. Meanwhile, we have been working with member states and our partners to ensure maximum synergy with other ongoing work targeted at broader economic governance issues. We will continue our support to integrate IFFs estimation with a broader spectrum of policy actions to curb IFFs, support countries to develop integrated national financing frameworks for financing sustainable development, recover stolen assets, and ensure sound public finance management and robust economic governance architecture. With that vision in mind, and the sincere hope that the peer learning and sustained efforts to measure IFF continues, as we have seen in this particular event, I thank you once again for your collective efforts and active participation, which has enlightened all of us in different dimensions. My thanks also go to all the Secretariat team members who greatly facilitated the conduct of this side event and bring these rich and invaluable experiences from across the world to our local appreciation. I thank you all. Back to you, Nyasulu.
Thank you, Alan. Just a minute for everybody. Can I just ask everybody to put on their cameras? Just want to take a final shot. Those that can. Ayo, go ahead. Are you done the shot?
Not yet. Just bear with me, please. Thanks, everyone.
Just a second, please.
Very some technical difficulties. If I can get somebody else to take this shot, please.
Okay.
I'm really sorry.
Anastasia, please.
Wait a moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you for your time. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening
Thank you.
and a day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.